Yes, so now going into this first quarter, it would be great to hear from anyone how the quarter has been. As we're going into the second quarter, sorry, how was Q1? I mean, I'll start with myself. I would say that usually I would immediately rush into action. Oh, this is what God is saying, so this is what I have to execute, blah, blah, blah. But this quarter, or still this quarter, has been very reflective. At the start of it, I think in January, in our church, we had a fast. And I feel like that fast was like a cleansing and a preparation for what is to come. You remember in the Bible, if you look at Daniel's life, Esther's life, Nehemiah's life, every time there was a responsibility, every time there was something that needed to be done, they would go into prayer and fasting, right? Jesus as well, who is the key forerunner for our lives, right? Every time there was a next level, every time that there was something that they needed to conquer, every time that there was warfare, every time that there was life to be lived and decisions to be made, they would go into prayer and fasting. And so that was the start of the quarter. So January, and then February was now basically slowly getting into all the things that God had said were necessary to do this year. I remember we discussed success and saying, how you define success and what it means to you, what it looks like to you is what will determine how your year is. And we highlighted the importance of obedience to God. So if you were to think about what does success mean, really is obedience to God. And while the world will tell us so many things, the world will give us so many adaptations of what success is, that really is at the forefront of what success is as a Christian. I'm believing that everyone here is a Christian, is a believer in God, believer in Jesus, Jesus Christ, his son. So today I wanted to speak on the execution quotient because you've come from a place of vision. So maybe December last year, God gave you a vision, and it'll be good for you guys, please, to use the comment section as I'm speaking. You can write anything that is laid on your heart. You can also ask questions, which I can answer as we go, because this is a different format. It's coaching, so I can answer as we go. Yeah. So yeah, I will answer as we go. But if there's anything that you've learned in this quarter, please write it in the comment section. What's one thing that you've learned? One thing that stretched you, one thing that opened up your eyes, something that you didn't expect. As I'm asking, I'm also thinking for myself what that is. Please share in the comment section. I think for me, I can think of something. I think this quarter really taught me that apart from God, you can do nothing. Like all these things that just happen or come naturally to us or just happen naturally, we don't realize that God is the one orchestrating everything. And so it's only when maybe something that was normal, something that would happen normally, doesn't happen, you now start to see how much we depend on God and how much God is at the center of everything that we are. But you guys, I want it to be interactive, so I'm waiting for you to share. What is one thing that you learned this quarter? As we come to the end of Q1, I am waiting patiently as possible. Okay, thank you. Miss Oma said she's learned to be patient and still learning, or more patient. Anybody else? I think that's something that I'm learning too. Okay, Intent says, I've learned that different seasons require different things, especially in terms of discipline and consecration. I love that so much. Thank you, Intent. Janet says, this quarter taught me patience. Okay, it stretched me. I need patience to build with God. Very timely. That's also a big lesson I learned as well this quarter is that, you need patience to build with God. It taught me patience and dependence on God alone. Yes. So it seems like there's a theme here. Even in time, you spoke about discipline and consecration, but it still aligns with that understanding your seasons, knowing what to do in those seasons, adapting to those seasons. Elizabeth said it taught me that we need people in this journey. And God truly sends the right people as long as we keep our eyes open. That is so instructive. Yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I feel like this is confirmation to even everything that God has been speaking to me about, but even what we'll share here a little bit. So the execution quotient is something that, as I was usually the way God speaks to me, okay, I'll read out Toyin's on and then we'll stop for now. I'm learning that obedience to God means saying no to things that the world may lead you to believe you should be doing, even when it seems too good to be true. Not everything that glitters is gold for real. Yes, I agree with that. Thank you everyone for sharing. So why the execution quotient? In December, we spoke about vision. What's your vision for 2026? But the thing with vision is that you can have a vision, but not know how to execute it, right? And so execution is turning from strategy into results. So it's moving from a place of strategy, your vision, your idea, everything is all in your head, all the ideas, you've written it down, write the vision, make it plain. But what happens next, right? How can you turn that vision into measurable success or measurable results? And the truth about this is that again, we've been saying that apart from God, we can do nothing. This is only possible with God. It is only God that can help us to turn our vision into results. It's not something we can do by ourselves. I mean, we do have a role to play, which is what we'll be discussing, but it's just highlighting the fact that God is the one that ultimately gives us this vision. And so he's the one that would help us, hold our hands. I love Psalm 32, verse 8. It says, I will direct you in the best pathway of your life. That's the scripture of my life, is that God is saying that he will guide you and lead you in the best pathway of your life. And so even when he gives you a vision, he's still there holding your hand. He's still there working with you. He's still there sustaining you through it. So we've already discussed. Okay, so I would ask, what is one vision the Lord has laid on your heart to do this year? What steps have you taken to move it forward? So you can be vague, you can be, I guess, direct. Just put in the chat box one vision that the Lord has laid on your heart to do this year. I can start. One vision the Lord laid on my heart to do was to set up a foundation, an impact foundation, and to run a program called Rise to Potential campaign, which the program is in the pilot phase, and I guess the foundation has been set up. So it's all in the process. Anybody else? One thing that the Lord laid on your heart to do this year, a vision he gave you, and steps you've taken to move it forward. I know some of the ladies on this call, and I know your vision, so you better share. ID, please can you share? ID.
Yes, please give me 1 second.
Okay. Anybody? Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I will share. One of the things that has been forefront of my mind that I believe God put on my heart is, creating a platform where executive assistants can be a lot more competent. I'd hosted the first event last year, and I felt led to do it in another country. And I was thinking about how it was going to happen, but I noticed that the moment that I took one step, God just orchestrated and organized resources that helped me take the next steps. And so I think that was I mean that was just powerful for me to see, like, if God wants you to do something, if you say yes and take the first step, he already has the other things figured out. You just have to follow him. Just like you said, God will direct us on the best pathway for our lives, and he's just always leading us in the direction that pleases him.
Amazing. I love that example. Because I'm reminded of even Deborah and what was the name of the man who was meant to go to war? The head of the army. She had she had told him that this is what the Lord is saying, and then he said, "Oh no, I can't go unless you go with me," right? And then she goes. But even when they get there, it is the Lord that actually fought the battle. They just needed to show up. And that is something that I'm learning consistently with God, is that He just needs you to say yes. He needs you to take steps as if you have everything that you need, and then He would back you. Then you would start to see doors opening, and which is a prayer that I always pray often. Thank you so much, Heidi, for sharing. Miss Oma says to start making films. Lynn says to start a foundation for people with sickle cell. I love that. Um, Oluwatobi Loba says, how do you know what your vision is? How are you sure it's from God? Asking because all the plans I thought were part of my vision this year have all fallen through, so I don't even know. Thank you for sharing that. I'll speak to it in a bit, just even as we go on. Favor says he emphasized me being visible. I stayed in hiding for too long. What that looks like for me is sharing my career journey on LinkedIn and essentially documenting my growth across my other social media. There were also some other things like picking up a business that I left for so long. I love that. Intent says to work with founders to develop the clarity and structure they need to thrive as founders and for their businesses as well. I've been working with my team to build the internal framework we need to support this work. I love that. And the reason why I love intent that you're emphasizing structure, because that is kind of what we're speaking about today. So we have the vision, and Oluwatobi Loba, I'll answer your question just as we go on. We have the vision, and then it's time to put it to action. But what does that actually require, right? How do you move from vision to execution? How do you move from vision to advancement? We're called to advance the kingdom of God. We're not here by accident. We're here for a reason. And it's important that we don't live our lives just anyhow. Like there's no intention, there's no direction. We always have to be aligned with God on who we are and what we're called to do. And so Oluwatobi Loba, to answer your question, how do you know what your vision is? The truth is that we are created to worship God. And I find that once that is the starting point for every single aspect of who we are, every single fiber of our being, that is how we move into a place of even having a vision for what God has called us to do. I think just that foundational understanding that we were designed and created intentionally to worship God. What that looks like is that we spend our lives, first of all, focused on Him. There's a concept I've been thinking about, and it's the fact that if you think about it, we are spirits, right? But we have bodies, right? And we're here on this earth as, I guess, bodies. There's the world in front of us. Everything around us is flesh, right? But we are spirits. And so a lot of times, because it's the flesh, because it's the world that we see, we tend to put that above the spirit. But originally, intentionally, we were designed and we have the spirit of God inside of us. And so the life that we live is spirit. And so what we're supposed to be feeding, what we're supposed to be amplifying is our spirits. But a lot of times we spend so much time focusing, and Oluwatobi, I don't know if you were on the call in December because we spoke about why do you even want to be successful? What is your goal for being successful, right? When our lives are informed by who God is, when our lives are informed by the fact that we were designed and created for Him, and it is only through Him that we can do or carry out anything that He's called us to, then it's different what we see our vision as. But first of all, I think that if you don't know what your vision is, I would say just abide. And abiding is not so that you know your vision. Abiding is what we're meant to do perpetually. So it's understanding that we are spirits, and that is where everything that we are has to start from. Imagine you are the same way we are our bodies, we have to eat. I think if as a human being you don't drink water for a certain amount of time, you probably die, right? Or if you don't eat for a certain amount of time, you probably die. It's the same way with our spirits. We need to keep feeding it. And the more we feed it, the more we understand who we are, the more we understand whose we are, the more we understand the vision that has been given to us, the more we understand our mandate on the earth. And I hope that's clear, Oluwatobi Loba, but you probably understand as we go. Um, or gain more clarity as we go on. So, what is an execution quotient, right? It's a metric and leadership skill that assesses an individual's ability to turn strategic plans or visions into measurable outcomes. And we want to be the ones who are doing the will of God and doing it intentionally, right? The same way that the things that matter to us, the things that we care so deeply about, we do it intentionally. We show up intentionally for them. It's the same way that when it comes to matters of God, the things that God has called us to do, the reason why we're designed, the reason why He placed us upon this earth, that we do it intentionally and with Him. So, how do we execute? What does that even look like? First of all, we need to understand what is vision, why, right? And why does vision matter? And, this is a Google definition that I found that vision is the ability to perceive or see God's plan and purpose and the ability to pursue it. It's a function of your heart, not of your brain. That is why we call it the vision of the heart. And I love this definition so much because, like I mentioned, your vision has to do with your heart. And when your heart is aligned as one with God and you understand that you are first spirit, then having a vision or having clarity on who God is saying or what God is saying per time, per season is not something that is hard. In the same way that if you have a relationship with, I guess the example I can use is my husband, I understand what it is that he wants or what it is that he needs. Right? Why? Because we spend so much time together. Why? Because we communicate. Why? Because there's conversations that we have constantly, right? So I understand the peculiarities of who he is and what God has called him to be, at least a little bit of it. But you get what I mean is that the more that we function with God, um the more that we're able to do what He has called us to do, right? And so vision has more to do with our hearts than our brains. It's in our hearts that God will drop a seed. It is in our hearts that um we have vision, and that's where vision comes from. It's not a thing of the brain, it's a thing of the heart. And that's why people always say that you can't um it doesn't just take mental agility or skill or mental capacity to be able to do God's will. It takes your heart. And the truth is, when your heart is aligned, that is when you'll be able to go far. Because the truth is, this, I don't know, whether you're in the workplace, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are a stay at home mom, whatever the case may be, you need God's strength. You need the might of the Holy Spirit to push you and propel you into what it is that you're called to. And so vision is very important. Without vision, where are you really going? Without vision, it's hard to even, determine that you're on the right path. And one thing that I love so much is Abraham in Genesis 13. We see that Abraham was had gone to a place that God said, leave your father and your mother and go somewhere I would show you. One thing we realize about that is that there was obedience with Abraham. God told him at a time where everybody stayed with their own. If you notice in the Bible, you see that generations will always stay together, right? And so God is telling him to leave everything that he knows and to go somewhere. Go somewhere, I will show you, right? He doesn't even know where he's going. But what happens is that when he gets there, he goes with Lot, his nephew, I believe, and he goes to this place and he says, look as far as you can see in every direction, north and south, east and west. I'm giving you all this land as far as you can see to you and your descendants as a permanent possession. He tells him, as far as your eyes can see. That is vision. Vision is you looking with the heart of your vision is looking with the eyes of your heart to see what God is saying, to see what God is calling you to. Vision is looking with the eyes of your hearts. And so you see that Abraham, even if Abraham could never have been able to imagine the depth of how much generations was given to him, right? The fact that we are descendants of Abraham, right? It says, as far as your eyes can see, every single thing I'm giving it to you. And so it was important because even though Abraham couldn't see the extent of it, he could see something. And so a lot of times, even with the vision that we've been given, we can't see the end of it. In fact, if they told us this is where it will end, we will not believe it, right? But we do look and we can't see that God is doing something. And he says to him, and I will give you as many descendants that like the dust of the earth, they cannot be counted. The dust of the earth that they cannot be counted. And that's what we're experiencing today, and it is still ongoing, right? And so vision is something that doesn't end with you. And I feel like that's something that is very important for us to note, because a lot of times we're building with just ourselves in mind. We only have the idea of what we're trying to do. We're thinking, okay, if I do this, it's going to make me this amount of money, and then I can survive, or my family can survive, or it will mean this and this and this. But that's very short sighted. And God is calling us to have eyes that can see beyond, right? We might not be able to see the full picture, but at least we're able to see beyond ourselves. And so that's another thing, is that vision will take you beyond yourself. If Abraham was just building for himself, we would be in trouble. If Abraham was just thinking for himself, but he was able to see beyond himself, right? And you see that even when he's putting Isaac on the altar, you see that with just the mindset that he had concerning God. And so I'm just realizing that I'm, these slides, I'm actually moving really slowly compared to where we should be by now. Okay, because we need to ask questions as well. So what are qualities of a vision, and what do you do next, right? So the thing about vision is you will know the next steps. You might not know exactly what to do next. I love what ID shared when she said she God told her to open up to Kenya, or to open up to another country. Her what's it called now? Her seminars or her workshops. And for her, it was like she didn't even know how that was going to be, but she just, took a step anyways. And what happened is that doors just started to open, helpers just started to come, things just started to happen, right? So it says you might not know the next, oh, I'm saying anyways, you might not know the next steps. It's fine. What it does actually, it forces you to remain. Your vision will have you sitting at the feet of God. If you're not doing that, then you need to double check yourself, right? It will force you to remain, because you need to gain instructions daily. You need to be able to hear daily what God is saying to you, right? And so there's a place of remaining, there's a place of abiding, there's a place of, moving to that next step in God and with God. It also requires faith to execute. And faith is taking a step even when you don't know what the outcome is. It is just moving. It is just getting yourself up and going. I remember even with this Rise to Potential campaign that we're doing, my team and I, we just said, okay, let's just go to one school. Let's go and meet with them. Let's discuss with because the goal is really to help young girls in junior secondary, senior secondary, to move beyond secondary school. If you notice, the amount of young girls that end up going into university is very limited in Nigeria compared to the men. And we also found that there's a lot of dropouts from junior secondary school to senior secondary school. So how do we bridge that gap, right? And I remember, like, we just went into the school, started having conversations. What happens is that you don't get the full picture, but bit by bit, just by moving, just by saying yes, just by, taking one foot in front of the other, by working with people, you start to it starts to come together. So it's not to say, oh, because I don't know what to do, I'm not going to move. You must move. You must do something, right? Because it's only going to get clearer the more that you move, right? And one thing about even just ourselves, I remember I shared this with someone in the workshop that we had for the young girls in SS3. One of the girls, Nigerian public schools, right? One of the girls was just jesting around, just acting anyhow. And someone on the team just said to her that, what are you doing? If you don't take yourself seriously, nobody would, right? If you don't take yourself, are you guys here? Please let me know that you're here with, I don't know, um, maybe not comments, but yeah, thank you. Yeah. And so someone on the team was like, wait, if you don't take yourself seriously, nobody will take you seriously. And I promise you that even for me at my big age, I was like, oh, my, this is so true. And I don't know if anyone ever feels that way, where it's like God has given you a vision, but even you don't even take yourself seriously, or you don't even take the vision seriously. You just see it as something else that you're supposed to do. But the truth is, how can you fulfill anything that you haven't even taken to heart? Something that you haven't sat down, you haven't do you guys get what I'm saying? Like something that you haven't yet owned. I'll call it that. How do you want somebody else to own it for you? Somebody said something recently to me that I found very instructive. She said, she was trying to apply for a course and she didn't have the money for it. And so she was asking God, like, God, who am I supposed to meet? Who can help me? How do I get this thing paid? And God said, you have to invest first. You can't ask someone to invest where you haven't invested. And that was so instructive because truly take responsibility. If when you put your hand on the plow, when you okay, fine, something you need a deal is 5 million naira or something you're trying to do requires 5 million naira, requires a certain amount of money. Even if it's 100K, you have be the first person to put it into that account that you're trying to get people to donate to. So there's a certain level of responsibility that we need to take for the vision that has been given to us. It wasn't given to somebody else, it was given to you, it was handed to you, right? And so plan and move. Don't wait to have it all figured out. Where you are with what you have. The thing is that the more that you do, even with the mistakes that you make, what happens is that you're gaining knowledge. I strongly believe that there's nothing like, a wasted effort. Every single mistake, every single thing that you do, it is leading you to your destination. The more that you make mistakes, the more that you learn. The mistakes that I've made in my lifetime, I know that, okay, I will not make them again. When I see them coming, I even know. I see them from afar, I already know that. I already know where this is going, right? So that's experience. That's what happens the more that you make an effort, right? And then remember that it's progress over perfection. It's not about just, getting to wherever you're trying to get to immediately. It's progress. And there's something about remaining, staying in that place. You're building something today, tomorrow you're building something else, next tomorrow is something else. I found that consistency is actually a formula that is required in execution. And we'll talk about that as well. So, what is stopping you? And I'm going to speak to this very quickly because I don't even want us to focus on what is stopping us. Let's start to be moving forward, right? We know that there are certain things that are preventing us from, just really sitting down with God and mapping out the vision that He has given us and taking one aspect of that map and digging deep into it. Some of the things that could affect us is the fear of the unknown, wanting to have everything figured out, just putting it out there that it is not possible. You will not have it all figured out, right? Another thing is not getting it right, looking foolish in front of people. The truth about it is that people will be okay. People don't even care as much as you think that they do. I remember that I think this was about 10 years ago when Instagram was still very weird or whatever. I mean, people were still trying to figure it out. I had this mentor who was posting a lot all the time. Now she was posting, she didn't even know, she didn't really, it wasn't really directed or targeted. She was just posting. She was just, I guess, building that muscle. And I remember someone in my office at the time saying to saying to me that I don't even know what that person is doing. She's just all over Instagram, just posting anyhow, blah, blah, blah. Bear in mind that she wasn't posting anything bad. It was either scriptures or it was about God or it was about her work or whatever the case may be. And I remember someone in my office just saying, I don't even know what that girl is doing, to be fair. Guess what? That supposed person that was just posting anyhow now is such a big influence and is doing such an amazing work in not just the body of Christ, but in young girls, in the lives of young girls. She was able to get a role with young girls just because of the adolescent girls, as the development world will call it, just because of all the posting that she had been doing, even though it didn't really have any direction. And so one thing I'm learning is that the people that you're looking at, that, oh, maybe you're making mistakes, they will even still say, oh, what's this one doing? Let them say it, just be moving, sure. Right? Whatever it is that you're called to. It could be finances, but the truth about it is that God has given us heavenly resources. There are heavenly resources that are available to us the moment a vision is given to us. The moment you have a vision, there is a bank in heaven somewhere that has a heap load of gold waiting for you. And the more that you tap into what it is that you're called to do, the more that that gold is being dispensed. So don't ever feel like you are limited. Don't ever feel like your resources are limiting you. They are not. There's also a place for you to be frugal and diligent with whatever it is that you have. There's someone that one of my mentors, there's something that she says. She said that you should always have a messy um what would I call it now? Would I say a messy pathway? And what that means is that whatever vision God has called you to do, especially if it doesn't have to do with the social space or it doesn't have to do with this, maybe just selling a product or whatever, there should be a messy pathway for that business. And what that means is that there should be something that you are funding in that company, in that organization, in maybe you're a what's it called? You're working in the corporates, your salary should have a mercy pathway where you are supporting or helping someone. Now, even if you're earning 50K, you can have that. But a lot of people always feel like we need to wait for something to happen before. Do you get? We need to wait for a lot of money before you can do something like that. And I'm reminded of Nimatai, one of my businesses. Since we started, we've been funding a young girl who I met in what's it called, the Spin Village in Ajegunle. I met her. She looked exactly like me when I was her age. She was just so tiny, very skinny. I just loved the girl. Her name is Naomi. And since then, we've been funding her. And she's in her final year in university since primary school. And so it's so important. At some point, I was saying to myself, oh, this business, I don't even know what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. And the Holy Spirit reminded me that it's not even about you. The business is not even about you. It's about the people. It's about education. It's about the funding. So everything that we're doing, we're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. There's a reason, there's an agenda. And the truth is, if we don't know what it is, if we don't know the vision and we don't write it down, we're not able to run the way that we should be running. And so that picture has to be clear and it has to be set. And so your image as well. A lot of us look at the way people see us. To be honest, if I'm being honest, I'm one of them. Like sometimes I won't want to do something or I won't want to post on Instagram because I just feel like how will it look or whatever. But that's not what we're called to. It is not what we're called to. And the more conscious we are of ourselves, the less conscious we are about God and his agenda. And then the last one is procrastination. Now, this happens all the time, and I feel like a lot of us might be on this table. Just the idea of wanting everything to be perfect and calling it perfection when it's actually procrastination, right? And so, what are the mindset shifts that we need to have? We need to remember that God has not given us the spirit of fear. He's given us power, He's given us love, given us a sound mind. We also need to remember that mistakes are inevitable, they are pathways to success. We need to ask God for strategies, invest first before other people can invest in us too. We also really need to remember that people don't care as much as they think, as much as we think they do. And even if they do care, how is that any of your business, to be fair? Like God has given you an assignment. Who are you reporting to? What is your mandate? What are you called to? And you remember in the slide before, we spoke about taking yourself seriously. It is so important that you take your vision seriously. It is so important. If you don't take it seriously, who's going to take it seriously? Who's going to care about what you're doing, what you're building, if you don't even care as much about what you're building? And so I'll go very quickly I need to move faster now, but the three principles of execution. And I say this very lightly because while these are principles for execution here on earth, I believe that what is most important is what I had shared earlier, is the understanding that we are spirits. We are spirits. And we, as worshippers of God, we worship Him in spirit and in truth. And it's from that place of understanding that we are spirits, it helps us to know what we are feeding first, so that even the execution of the vision that He has given us will flow freely. And so the first thing that we feed is our spirit man. How do we feed our spirit man? We feed our spirit man in prayer. We feed our spirit man in studying the word. Without the word, I don't even know. Even the strategies for business, every single thing is in the word. See, guys, if you take, or ladies, if you take the time to study Nehemiah, you will build your vision differently. There's one part where he said um, that for days or however long it took them, I think it was 50 something days it took them to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. He said that they didn't take off their clothes for a certain period of time. Why? They were under attack, and these people did not take off their clothes. That is a certain level of taking your vision seriously. I don't if that isn't, I don't know what else is. They did not take off their clothes, they did not sleep because they were trying to get to something. Now, what are the three principles of execution? The first one is you. Imagine that an execution quotient is like a formula. You are the multiplier. You are the denominator. You are the one that needs to be multiplied to something to get some. Like it is you. At the center of it is you. All of us individually, it is us. You matter the most. And so, what you say about yourself, what you believe about yourself, what you believe about God is what will move you from point A to point B. That is the multiplier effect. And so we must be grounded in the word of God. Why? That is our manual. Imagine that you want to launch a business in, I don't even know, you want to build a rocket and there's no manual for building the rockets. There's no sample. You've not seen anything that has to do with building the rockets before. And you say that you have a vision to build the rockets. It's not possible. It's not going to happen unless it's God that is putting it in your brain directly one time. But it's not going to happen. So what really matters is the word of God. That is the manual that we have for every single vision that has been given to us. And so we need to be filled with the manual. We need to be filled to overflowing with the manual. And that is the differentiator. That is the multiplier. So when the enemy comes with different things and different strategies, we are already countering everything. We already know what it is that he's coming with, and we have the response ready. So when you want to procrastinate, you have what you're responding with. When you want to believe that, oh, you don't have what it takes, you have what you're responding with. You know who you are. I love that Bible passage. I think it's Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who lives, but it's Christ who lives in me. And this life I now live by the faith. And this life I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I love that it says that the life I now live, I live by the faith, not by. So what that means is that the foundation, God is the foundation of that faith. God is the foundation of the faith that we have now that we're living. The life that we're living is living on the foundation of the faith of Jesus Christ. And so we're not living in and of ourselves. And then another thing I wanted to highlight when it comes to execution is identity. So when you ask yourself, who am I? Ask yourself, who am I? Then write down the values. And when I say who am I, like who could you become that would allow you to execute or to do what God has called you to do? What would allow you to be consistent? What would allow you to remain? What would allow you to stay? What would allow you to persevere? What would allow you to keep going? Do you see what I'm saying? Ask, who am I? Then write down the vision write down the values that will allow you to consistently be that person and show up like that. So if I were to give myself an example, and I want you guys to be doing this exercise actually. So if I were to use myself as an example, everything that everything that God is calling me to do, sometimes I feel like it's a lot, but who am I? Who is Ijeoma Adesanya that will allow her to be that person? And I will say that she's organized. Before I even say that she's organized, I would say that she's someone that wakes up at the crack of dawn and goes to be with her father. Because she knows that there's nothing that can come out of her if she hasn't yet come out of her of eternal value, if she hasn't yet sat with God, if she hasn't yet, met with the person that matters the most, if she hasn't yet prioritized what her priority really is as a spirit man who is in a physical body, right? As food, as nourishment. She knows that she needs to be nourished for her to be able to get to where she's trying to get to. Right. And so it says, write down the values and allow and ask yourself, who do I need to consistently show up as? I told you, for me, it's being organized. So you do that exercise for yourself. And what you want to do is you want to move from an outcome-based perspective. I saw this in a book called Atomic Habits, right? This idea of moving from outcome-based perspective and moving into an identity-based mindset. So you're saying, your outcome-based execution is saying, oh, you know what, I want to publish or vision is saying, I want to publish a book, right? But identity-based is almost speaking to who you need to become to be able to do that, right? And speaking to what it is that you are to be able to be that, right? So for example, outcome-based, I want to publish a book. Identity-based is saying, I'm going to wake up every day and write for 1 hour because I'm a writer, right? Identity-based is saying I'm a writer. What do writers do? Anybody? Because you guys are getting quiet. What do writers do? They write, right? So if you're saying that you're a writer, then you should be writing. But if you're looking at it from a place of outcome, I want to publish a book, it's very different, right? Because you're looking at the outcome. The book is the outcome. But what needs to happen for you to get there? You need to write. So when you now say that I'm a writer, you now start to show up differently, right? And so that's showing up exactly, daily writing. That showing up is now based on who you are, which is why we had the conversation earlier about taking yourself seriously and taking your vision seriously. So instead of saying, I want to launch a cookbook, or I want to, you say, I want to, you want to launch a cookbook, but how are you going to do that? You're a cook. It means that you have to be making things that, because you need to keep testing things and trying new things. And so your mindset shifts to wanting to write a book, to being someone who cooks and who can detail recipes in a way that, works for people. And lastly, I would say that nothing of eternal value happens outside of total surrender to God. Surrender is necessary. It is instrumental. If you are not surrendered as a human being, the enemy will use you for football. Like, the enemy will kick you on every direction in every way possible. Why? Because submission to God is what allows your heart to be able to take in the vision from God and execute it, right? Because once you're not submitted, it means that, there's opportunities for pride to come in. I realized recently that we don't talk enough about pride. Pride is the single most thing that affects people from fulfilling their God-given potential, from fulfilling their destiny, reaching their God-given potential. It is pride. And pride comes from a place where you are not completely surrendered and submissive to the will of God. What that means is that even though that thing that God has called you to do might not make you the most wealthy person, you do it anyways. It doesn't make you the most popular person, you do it anyways. It makes your family members turn their back on you. You do it anyways. Is this what God has said to me? Is this what God has called me to do? Is this the idea that God has given me? Is this something that is on my heart, that, the vision of my heart has been opened up to by God? You do it anyway. Submission is not about other people. Submission is about total surrender to God. And that is what is of eternal value. That is what success looks like. It's total submission to God. When you see someone who is submitted to God, who is surrendered to God, you will know their lifestyle, the way that they live, the way that they respond to people, the way that they act. You can tell that they have allowed themselves to die to the flesh. And what happens when you die to the flesh is that your spirit just comes alive in a way that is just unbelievable. But anyways, we have some. So I'll try and finish in 7 minutes, and then we can have questions. So let me move very quickly. So what was I saying? It's you, right? It's you. And one thing that enables you is the grace of God. So If you were to look at yourself, you, me, being the multiplier effect for execution, it is the grace of God. 1 Corinthians 15:10, it says, "But by the grace of God, I am what I am." And I want everyone to say that to themselves. Say, by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace towards me is not in vain. So, because his grace exists in your life, and that is what determines that you are what you are, it is also not wasted. He didn't give you the grace so that it will be wasted. It says, and Paul was saying that I labored more abundantly than they all. Yet not I, but the grace of God which was with me. And so, I had mentioned that at the beginning of this meeting, I had mentioned that for me, one of the things that I had learned was that I can't do anything outside of God. I feel like this grace thing really, really came and sat with me. You are what you are by the grace of God. You are able to carry out any vision that has been placed in your heart by the grace of God. You're able to execute one day at a time. One day, one of my favorite things to say now is that I'm taking everything one day at a time. Because if I were to look at it so, broadly and holistically, it just feels like how many things are you trying to do at the same time? But I can't do it like that. And the more that I recognize that, this is what God has called me to do and move forward, the more that, the more that I can move, the more that we can actually achieve all these things, right? Because it's not by our own strength, it's by the grace of God. And so don't ever look to yourself, look to the grace of God. And it is by the grace of God that you are what you are. But guess what? This grace will not be wasted in vain on you. It is not wasted in vain because you even labor more than those who don't even know about the grace of God. You take the grace of God and you make it your multiplier. You multiply the fruit of his grace in your life, right? You multiply the fruit of the grace in your life. Secondly, you must know that God sees you. I saw this somewhere and it just blew my mind. The fact that understanding that God sees you, right, is everything. Because if you don't understand that God sees you, what that means is you don't also understand that he's your provider. Because how can he provide for you if he hasn't seen you? Right? How can he be Jehovah Jireh to you if he's not Elroy to you? If he's not the God that sees you, if you don't know him as that, if you don't realize that in every single thing he has called you to do, every aspect of your life, every fragment of who you are, that the God sees you. He sees you, he sees your struggles, he sees your suffering, he sees your pain, he sees your joy, he sees your laughter, he sees your family, he sees your desires. Can I just emphasize, he sees your desires. He sees the things, he sees your struggles, he sees where you're stuck. He sees all these things. If you do not understand that God sees you, how can you understand that he's Jehovah Jireh? How do you know that he's the one that provides for you? How do you know that he's your defender? How do you know that he is your rock? How do you know that he's your helper? How do you know that he's your father? Have you ever seen a father that will just close his eyes? He doesn't want to see his children. He's just moving around like he's giving you everything you need, but his eyes are closed. It's like, I don't even want to see you. It's not possible now. So that understanding helps you when you are moving forward with whatever it is that is on your heart. No matter how small, no matter what it looks like, no matter if it makes sense, you're just moving on. You're moving forward. You're forging ahead, right? Secondly is discipline, right? And so when we've dealt with us, when you've dealt with you, when you understand that it's the grace of God that you are what you are. Sorry, my son. Tell me. I'll be back. I'm in a meeting. I'm in a meeting. I'm coming. I'm coming. Um, yeah, when you understand that God sees you, when you understand that you are what you are because of the grace of God, then you now, as Paul said, he says, I labored more than even they, who didn't have this understanding. And so that's where discipline comes in. And one thing about discipline is that there has to be self-control, right? And so the questions that you're asking yourself, and please, I want you guys to write this down. The questions that you're asking yourself is, what habits have you formed in your lifetime? And are they moving you forward in life? And I'll give you a perfect example. I sleep late. That's just how I am. Oh. I'm a night, what do they call it? Night crawler. That's when I do my most work and this and that and that. Is that helping you? If it is, okay. But if it's not, you get, if it's a lifetime habit that you formed that is not really helping you, you can change it. So ask yourself, what are the habits that are formed and are they moving me forward? There are some that you say that this is who I am, but it's only because that's all you've been doing. So if you turn around and you make a change and you take a turn, you will start to see that you're moving forward in a different way. Do you get? So what is it that is lifetime habits that you have? And ask yourself, are they moving me forward? Right? And so write down 3 habits that can propel you forward as you execute the vision that you have received from God. What are 3 habits that can propel you forward? I told you my own. My own is I need to meet with God daily. It's just is the instruction for me, right? And it has to be early. It has to be on time. I'm sorry, 1 second. Sorry. So yeah, write down the 3 habits. I hope that gave you some time to do that. What's holding you back? Is it fear maxes, procrastination? One of the scriptures that I love so much is Romans 5:3, and I love it in the KJV version because it speaks to us building perseverance and perseverance leading to patience and patience to experience. I love experience so much because what happens is that when you're dealing with stuff, right? You don't realize that even as you're staying patient and waiting on God, you're gaining experience. And we tend to take that for granted. And experience leads to hope. And we all know that our hope will not be cut short, right? And it's important as Christians that we have hope. And then one of the points as well is that your why has to be clear. Without it, it's easy to give up or not push enough. I was reminded of it recently. Someone was speaking to um, a trophy. Imagine knowing that if you were to train for 5 hours a day and go for a tournament, there's a trophy that you would win. Now, this trophy is gold, this trophy is massive, this trophy means that you are the best of the best. This trophy announces you as the champion or world champion of something, let me say gymnast or something. And this is the goal that you're trying to get to. Your why must be clear. Why are you doing what you're doing? If it's for the glory of God, it has to be clear, right? What are you trying to push for? What are you trying to achieve? How, what impact do you want to make in the world? If you're saying that you want every young girl who is in secondary school to get into university, that is a goal, right? But it has to be clear. The trophy of what you're trying to achieve has to be clear to you. If it's that you just want to live your life for the glory of God, whatever that is, whatever He sends you, whatever He calls you to do, wherever He tells you to go, you are malleable, you are available, you are ready. That is a clear goal. But your why must be very clear. Every single assignment that you have, why are you doing it? You're in the workplace, why? What is your assignment in that place that you're in? What is God trying to do there? When your why is clear, what that means is that you actually have a strategy, you have an agenda, you have where you're trying to get to. You're not just there sitting down waiting to be paid a salary, right? There's a goal, there's a mark. And lastly, you must conquer yourself first. There's nothing that can happen outside of you conquering yourself. When you can learn discipline, then everything else around you can also will follow suit, right? And I love the 2 scriptures I'm going to share tied to discipline. It speaks to an athlete, right? It says, and I'll just highlight the parts of underlined. It says a true athlete will be disciplined in every respect, practicing constant self-control in order to win a laurel wreath that quickly withers. But we run our race to win a victor's crown that will last forever. And for me, I feel like just even imagining the victor's crown on our heads, like that is enough to just remind you of why we're running. And it says for that reason I don't run, and this was Paul as again. It says for that reason I don't run just for exercise or box like one throwing aimless punches. but I train like a champion athlete. I subdue my body and get it under my control so that after preaching the good news to others, I myself won't be disqualified. So he is running his own race because he doesn't want to be disqualified from the same gospel that he has been preaching to everybody. He took the vision that God said, go out and make disciples of all men, preach my gospel to the nations of the earth, right? He took that and he made that his mission, right? And he's saying that he's doing that and he doesn't want to be disqualified um, after he has preached the good news. So what does he do? He subdues his body. He has self-control. He holds himself back. And so that's very important. Again, with experience, we spoke about it, Romans 5:3-4. It says that not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulations work. And so there's a glory in tribulations, there's a glory in where you are. There's a glory in understanding that even though, it's trying times, you know that God is at work. You know that tribulations will lead to patience, patience to experience, and experience hope. And we know that our hope will not be cut short. So, firstly, we've shared that it's about us, it's about you, it's about the mindset that you have, it's about how you see yourself, it's about, what your identity is, right? And how you tie your identity to the vision that you've been given. Is also about discipline, how you discipline your body, how you train your mind and your will to be able to push forward and do what God has called you to do. And lastly, it's about systems. It's one thing to say this is what I'm trying to do. It's another thing to put systems in place. And this is something that gets us stuck a lot of the times. A lot of times where we're stuck is in systems. We're stuck in systems. We know what we want to do. We're given a vision and we just go right ahead into that vision. But what keeps the vision going is systems. And so when Intern was sharing that she had built her company and she's now at the point where she's working on the systems, that is where a lot of us get stuck. What we do is that we start something and then and systems doesn't even have to be just about a business. It could be you started working out, you go to the gym. What are the systems you put in place to make sure that you maintain that consistency? Every single thing needs systems. Every single thing needs systems to ensure that it's happening consistently. There's a wheel that is spinning constantly, right? And so for everything in our lives, this is something that is very important. If you want to gain a habit, if you want to start to do something. So for example, I use the example of sleeping late or whatever. You say, you know what, I want to start sleeping earlier. And the reason why I want to start sleeping earlier is because I want to wake up earlier. What do? You create a system around it. That system could look like anything that works for you. It could look like ensuring that you have an alarm set maybe 1 hour before it's bedtime. So you're already gearing yourself up for it. It could mean that you don't take any appointments after a certain time. Because if you want to sleep early and then you're taking appointments that are late or you're having meetings that are late into the night, how are you going to do that? Do you see what I mean? Or you're hanging out with people at certain times, right? You put systems in place that allow the wheel to keep spinning, right? And the thing about systems is that they bypass feelings and impromptu decision making. Systems will bypass feelings. It's not about how you feel. Maybe today you're in the mood to have a meeting with your team, tomorrow you're not in the mood. It will bypass those feelings because those systems have already been put in place. The calendar invite is already sent. All your team know that they're joining at a certain time. Your feelings are not involved, right? And one thing that, I already shared, it's when you receive a vision or when you have a vision, is making sure that you break it down into systems that can run concurrently. A lot of times when we have a vision, we just run with it, right? We run with it, we start executing. A lot of times, and this is something that I've seen, is that we focus so much on social media and how things look. Listen, have something that actually functions, have something that runs before you even start. Do you get what I'm saying? When I say works, I mean the back end. Have something that is actually um, brings value and adds value. And when you do that, marketing will be so easy. But a lot of times we focus on marketing first before actually, what it is that we're trying to achieve. A lot of times we just focus so much on the optics and how things look. You have a vision, you start setting up logo, you start, all these things, opening Instagram page. Like, that's not the focus. The focus is this thing that I'm trying to do. How is it going to bring value to the world? The truth is, people chase value, money chases value, right? And Moses is an example of systems. His father-in-law, Jethro, came to him and said, Moses, why are you trying to do all these things at the same time? Why don't you build systems to govern the Israelites, right? And so what did Moses do? He now appointed, and his father-in-law told him exactly what to do. He told him to appoint people to meet with and, support and judge the Israelites. He couldn't do it all by himself. So he could have been burnt out and he could have been frustrated and maybe not even productive, and he's blaming God. But it's like God has given us the foresight, He's given us the brain, He's given us, just the will and the power to determine what we can do to push the vision forward. A lot of times we want him to download word for word, line by line, exactly how we should do it, but he's not going to do that. That's why we have brains. That's why we go to school. That's why we learn. That's why we're constantly learning. And so, we see that Moses had to build strategies. So he put some over hundreds, he put some over tens, he put some over 50s based on their capabilities, right? And then something else that I've been highlighting is consistency. Consistency is key. So staying consistent means that there's a multiplier effect over time. If you look at the law of compounding interest, you realize that the more that you leave your money in an account and it keeps the interest you get keeps reinvesting into that same thing. By the time you look 10 years from then, 15 years from then, you have money that you weren't even concerned about. Maybe you started with a very small amount. So that consistency and the system of just allowing the interest to reinvest in your account is like a system that keeps the wheels spinning, right? So things are just happening without you even having to put your hand in there, because there's so many things that you have your hand in. And so consistency is key. It's important that, when we get a vision, the first thing that we do is build the systems in the back end. I'm not saying that marketing is not important, but I'm saying that be sensible and strategic about when that should come in. Because what we have now in a lot of things that we're doing, even with, sorry to say, but with our leadership, is half-baked systems, but a lot of noise. So we have a lot of half-baked systems, especially in Nigeria. We've not really sat down. In fact, there was something Pastor Adeboye said that I found to be very controversial. But he was saying that Nigeria had no business asking for freedom from our colonizers as early as we did. Why? He believes that we didn't take the time to learn everything that we needed to learn. That at the time that they had taken over, we hadn't learned how to make cars, and still the whole of Nigeria is importing cars. We hadn't learned how to do certain things. We had structured our government in the way that we should have. And so you see people who maybe it took them longer to drive away their colonizers or take independence from their colonizers, that they were able to have certain systems and structures in place. So it's not necessarily that, what's it was good for them to be here, but it's that did we benefit, did we take as much as we needed to so that we could be self-sufficient? And then lastly, there are tools within your industry. Go and find them. Every single industry has a tool, has tools, not a tool, has tools that help you to run optimally. Find them, learn them, study them, and allow that to propel you forward. Two examples. We know of Joseph's economic system. Like when Pharaoh came to him with the dream, he was very clear on the solution. And even with him being clear on the solution, one thing that I love about it is that he executed it to the T. So it's one thing to be clear and to say it out. And he was very clear. He said, find an intelligent and wise man, put him in charge of the entire land of Egypt. He wasn't even thinking about himself when he said it. Then he told Pharaoh, appoint supervisors over the land. Let them collect 1/5 of all the crops during the 7 good years. Have them gather all the food produced in the good years that are just ahead and bring it to Pharaoh's storehouses, store it away and guard it so there will be food in the cities. That way, there'll be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come to the land of Egypt. Otherwise, this famine will destroy the land. One thing we notice about this is that he put in the systems. Systems were put in place to ensure that 1/5 of the crop was collected. That 1/5 of the crop that was collected from everybody was stored. Now, in other systems, you see situations where the 1/5 will be stored, and then tomorrow now, what do you call it? I don't know how to say it in Yoruba or in other languages, but um people will start to take from what is stored. Do you get, like, the systems are put in place? It has to be consistently monitored and followed through. So it's one thing to put them in place, it's another thing to follow through. And we see that Joseph was very strategic in this, and we see that when the famine did come, they were fine. Right. And so God is not unjust in that he would have given you an instruction or an assignment, and you mess it up and mess around with it, and he would just, you do, there's a scripture that says that, you reap what you sow, right? And so we have to be mindful of the fact that we do have instructions, we do have ideas of how, or strategies of how we can make things happen, and we need to follow it through to the end. If we don't, there are people who suffer for it, right? And we can see that with Nehemiah's coordination. Nehemiah was rebuilding the walls. One thing I love so much is when everybody in front was building in front of their house. That is such a wise strategy, right? Some people he focused on to build the gates, all the gates. So different priests were building the sheep gates, the this gate, the that gate. And then he went on to people just building the sections across from their house, right? And those are strategies. Those are strategies that God gives us in a place of quiet. That's coordination that we get from the place of waiting on God. And so structures are important because they were able to rebuild the walls in 50 something days because they had the right structures and systems in place. You remember they also had a sword in one hand, and a what's it called? I would say hammer in the other hand. Okay. Yeah, they had a sword in one hand and something else in another, and their tools of building in the other hand. And so they had the right system set up, even for the enemy. They were also going to blow a trumpet for everyone to gather together once there was any sign of trouble. So they were well prepared. They were prepared for war. They were prepared to build. And that's something that's very instructive that I believe God wants us to learn today, is that we need to be prepared for war, and we also need to be prepared to build. And the two can happen concurrently, right? And so just to close off, we are called to bear fruits, right? We are called to bear fruits. We are called to bear fruits. I think there's a mistake with that. Yeah. We're called to bear fruits, and God is calling us to sorry God is calling us to a place where we grow in spiritual wisdom. And I love Colossians 1:9-12. I was on a prayer call this morning, and this was emphasized. I knew that this was what something God wanted me to highlight. I hope everyone can still hear me. Can you hear me? Because I have a call coming in. Just put a thumbs up.
Yes.
Hear me? Okay, okay, awesome. Yeah. So I'll share two scriptures and that's where we close, but where God really was highlighting spiritual wisdom. God is highlighting spiritual wisdom where we come into that place of understanding that is bigger than us. It's not about us. There's a grand plan, and we have the power by the grace of God to do what He has called us to do. And this Colossians 1, if we can take some time to really study it, from verse 9, it says, "We've not stopped praying for you since we first heard about you. We ask God to give you complete knowledge of His will." And this is my prayer for everyone on this call, that God will give us complete knowledge of His will and give us spiritual wisdom and understanding, that then the way we live our lives will always honor and please the Lord. And our lives will produce every kind of good fruit. Our lives will produce every kind, every kind of good fruit. All the while, we will grow as we know God better and better. We also pray that we will be strengthened with all his glorious power. So we'll have all the endurance and patience we need. Remember everyone that spoke about patience. This is our prayer. We'll be strengthened with all his glorious power. So we will have all the endurance and the patience we need. We'll be filled with joy, always thanking the Father. He has enabled us to share in the inheritance that belongs to his people who live in the light. We are the people of God who live in his light. And so that spiritual blessing is on us. And lastly, I wanted to speak on the river of life, right? Which is really around why we do what we do. Revelation 22, verse 1. And I'll read it from my Bible. And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the middle of its streets and on either side of the river was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And this is really what I want to emphasize. And I hope you guys heard me and you can read it in your own time. It's Revelations 22 from verse 1 to 2. And the end says the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And I just wanted to highlight here just the importance of understanding that everything that we do, every vision that we have, just the life that we live, the even just from being in a place where we just say yes to God, or being in a place where we are kind or thoughtful or diligent. Like in all those places, what is happening is that we're bearing fruits, right? Okay, this is the NKJV translation. NKJV. And so we are the pure river. We are the river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the middle of his streets and on either side of the river is the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits each tree, yielding its fruit every month. And so it's just been in that place where we understand that, everything that we are the tree of life where, God's beautiful creation. And, everything that we are is for the healing of the nations in every single sphere, in every single thing that we touch, in every way that we touch it. God is calling us to bear fruits and to bear fruits that last. I'm reminded of Ezekiel 47 as well, that speaks to us being a river, right? And I believe it's in verse 12, it speaks to us, always having fruits, new crop every month. New crop every month. So just that understanding that we bear fruits for the nations. We are called to the nations, not in the way that it looks like in the world on social media, but in the way that God sees it. That in every single little thing that he has called us to do, even if you don't have a job right now, even if you don't have anything that you find that you're doing right now, just understanding that just cleaning your house, just you being kind, you showing up in church, you being helpful, just releasing goodness leads to the healing of the nations, right? And I find that when we find God as our soul and complete necessity, and vital necessity, what happens is that everything else flows freely. The river flows freely. The river is pure, like even just, the way that we consecrate ourselves. And what does consecration really mean? Consecration is just, if I were to put it as simply as possible, I think it's an awareness of who you are in God. I would say consecration is an awareness of who you are in God and a resting and an abiding in that place of of who God is, right, in your life. And it all comes down to being more serious about the way you see your vision. If you see that it's healing to the nations, being more serious about how you execute your vision. If you see that it is for God, it is to God, and it is again healing the nations. And you're a river that flows. When a river flows, what kind of fruits does the river, what kind of fruits does the trees on the sides of where the river is flowing, what kind of fruits does it bear? Remember, it says here that the river that flows is pure and it's almost like crystal, right? Um, And so God is calling us to that place of just understanding why we're executing. Why are we even executing? Why does it even matter? Why does the work I do matter? It doesn't matter who you are. You are an engineer, you are a stylist, you are a hairstylist. It doesn't matter who you are. Why does the work that you do matter? Right? What is God trying to use it to fulfill? What is your role in that? You, by just showing up early, by learning your craft, by understanding what it is that you're doing, it makes all the difference. And so I want us to not discount ourselves. I want us to be a bit more intentional about our lives. And I put this, and it's very funny because, when it comes to disciplining the body, right? And in terms of working out and stuff like that, at the start when you're doing it, it feels almost impossible. You feel like you're about to die, right? And you're just, for me, when I work out, I'm like, but why do I need to do this to myself, right? But the thing is that the fruits at the end are great, right? We want long life, we want to be strong, we want to grow old and be able to um walk up a stairs. We want to be able to be strong. We want to be able to still be there for our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, right? And so there are benefits to why we do what we do. In the same way that, with discipline and with execution and commitment, there are reasons why we do what we do, right? Because we want to win the prize that has been set before us, the goal that has been set before us. We want God. We want Jesus. We want to heal the nations. We want his will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. There's nowhere else, there's no way else for him to fulfill that but through us. Right? And we were created to worship him. So you can imagine that he's created us to worship him and we're not worshiping him. We're too busy with the world. Oh, yeah. We're too busy with what everybody thinks and what is going on. And we've left his worship. We've left reverence for him. We've left that place of intimacy and relationship, which is what he desires the most from us, right? That place of worship, reverence, relationship. And so in the next, phase of the year, which is Q2, what are we committing to? What spiritual discipline are we committing to? What personal discipline are we committing to? What work discipline are we committing to? With spiritual discipline, we can do more reading the word, studying the word, meditating on it. Because it is in meditation that it actually becomes real to us, that it comes alive to us. We can do more of personal discipline. What can we do personally? It could be working out, which is why I put this picture. It could be anything, right? And then work discipline as well. What is something that you're trying to do or achieve, right? And so these are the things that I want us to take some time to really think through. Three things that we want to commit to in Q2, one under each bucket. What would you do differently at work? What would you do differently personally? I would say personally, something that I really want to do is to show up early. And one way that or show up on time. One way that I see that happening um, is to not overcommit. So if I know that I have something at 8, then I say I'm going to be somewhere at 9. That doesn't make any sense, right? And so it's being holding myself accountable to that. So it'll be great for everyone to, have that, I guess, discussion with yourself, pray about it. But you'll find that at the end of the quarter, you have fulfilled all those things. Yeah, so one spiritual discipline, one personal discipline, and one work discipline. So yeah, thank you everyone. I think that's the last of the slides. We also have a WhatsApp group. If you're not on, you should join. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, everyone. We'll also put this up on YouTube so you can share it with anyone you think will benefit from it. Okay, so I'm just reading Favor's question. She moved from not knowing what to do to knowing, and now there's structures and systems in place. But the moment I start executing, I start feeling burnout because I'm doing all these things simultaneously. So my question is, how can I, with multiple visions, get things done, especially when I have a 9 to 5 on this side? That's a good question. I think it's important to not, so because God has given you certain visions, it doesn't mean that everything has to happen at the same time, right? So I think it's just going back to Him to find out what is required for this season. Because and also, if then everything is required, asking for capacity to be able to do them all. But I do believe that God wants us to do things excellently and to show up in a certain way. So I think it's important to take it one day at a time, do one thing at a time or two things, but don't try to do too many things because what will happen is, especially if you have a 9 to 5, you end up disappointing the people that you're working with, and it doesn't look good either way. So I think it's just going to a place of prayer and asking God what to prioritize in this season. Because a lot of times He's giving us a vision, but it's for a set time. It's not for now, but we just move. And I find that the more that you stay, when I say stay, I mean keep going back to Him and keep asking, you realize that it's actually not for now. But a lot of times we just hear something and we just run. But what we should do is when we hear something is take time consistently to continue to hear and continue to, get the full picture in terms of when you should move. And once you have your time to move, then you move. But don't be too quick to take every idea that you have. Every idea you have doesn't have to become a business. And it doesn't have to be. There's some things that you do for. Now, for example, for me now, I've separated what I do into three buckets: um, ministry, like my core, and then philanthropy, right? So it's just making sure that you're putting things in the right buckets and you're not trying to do everything all at the same time. But if you want to do your core work and you have 5 different core works, that's not possible because you can't build all of them at the time. And if you look at people in the Bible, you see that at every given point in time, they were focused on the exact assignment that they were given, right? Jesus Christ had one clear mission, and that's what his focus, right? What's it called? Nehemiah as well went to rebuild the walls. He took permission from the king. He wasn't working with the king and still doing that at the same time. No, he took time out to go and do it. So I think it's very important that you sit with God on that. Jane says, how do you know when disappointments are delayed versus when they are leading you towards a detour? Can you explain that? How do you know when disappointments are delayed? Do you mean God's delay versus when they're leading you towards a detour?
Yes, sometimes they are just a blip on the road. It's like you can come back from, and this should not stop you from pursuing the vision, versus when it, it appears you should just do something else, or you should maybe you know approach it completely different way than your blueprints from God had seemed to define for you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I think it's still in that place of just clarifying with God. I feel like when it's a delay, meaning that it's just a time thing, and a lot of things are, by the way, a lot of things are a delay, but because of this patience thing that we're talking about earlier, people don't know how to, accept that it's a delay and wait, right? And so we end up, just completely cutting off that thing. Um, I found that nothing that you build for God and with God is ever like I feel like it takes time to build, right? Why does it take time to build? Because it's also building you in the process, right? And so if you find that it's your own expectations that are causing you to call it delay, then you should check that, right? We said that you are the multiplier effect in whatever it is that you're executing. So are you the one that is determining that it's a delay, right? Or that it's, or it's a detour. Like, what is causing you to look at it as a delay or a detour, right? That matters. So what is the state of your heart in terms of how are you seeing what God has called you to build? Are you seeing it as something that has to happen now? Or are you aligned with the way that God moves and the way that God works? If you see the life of Jesus, you see that from Genesis, he was already talking about Jesus. Like, it was already finished. As he was creating the heavens and the earth, it was already finished. And so you understand that the way that God works and the way that we see things is very, very different. It's very different. And so we have to be mindful of that and keep asking God to open up the eyes of our understanding so that we might know the hope and the calling, the riches of his glorious inheritance in the saints. It's important that we understand the riches of the inheritance in the saints, the inheritance that we have in him. So I think it's just understanding that why am I seeing this as a delay? And could this actually be a detour? If it's a detour, you will feel so uncomfortable that you are in the wrong place. You will feel so uncomfortable that even though this was something that I started off with, it's not yet it's not the right time, maybe, or it's not for now, or it's not something that I should continue, right? But if it's delays, your flesh that will be disturbing you, that, oh, why is this thing not happening, why is this, why is that? I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, so Vade's question, is it normal to feel lost while executing your vision? Yes, it is normal to feel lost. And remember, that's why we started with really the foundation of everything that we are. Everything that we are is God. And so I feel like once we get to that point where we truly understand that we are first spirits and we have to feed our spirits, the more you feed your spirit, your vision will be clear. In fact, the clarity will be blinding. Feed your spirit, right? Feed your spirit, because that's who was giving the vision, right? That's who can carry the vision, right? It is your spirit, man, the Holy Spirit at work in you that can make that vision come to life, right? Because it is God who is at work in us, giving us the desire, giving us the power to do what pleases him. It's not of our own accord. And so if you're feeling lost, you need to go back to the person that gave you that vision in the first place. And you need to operate from there, because that's the only way you can actually fulfill it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. God bless you. Oh, Chiamaka said, I have a question. Did you put it in the chat box?
Oh, I didn't because it's very specific. Good
Okay.
day. So something I have struggled with is, of course, thank you so much. Today I've learned so much, and most of my questions have been answered already. But one thing I have struggled with is when you mentioned pride, right? As an entrepreneur and also in the creative industry, sometimes I get a nudge that it's time to move on to something else. But it happens that at the time where I'm thinking it's time to move on, something maybe like a misunderstanding happens, and I'm like, okay, it's not even worth my time anymore. So I'm now sometimes I struggle with knowing if it's my pride talking like, okay, I can easily just go and work for somebody else or work in another company, or if it was already the next step and this chaos happening is like a what I call it a push to go forward. Just trying to decipher when it's the next it's the next thing to do or when it's my pride getting in the way.
Yeah, I think it's similar to the answer for Jane. I feel like, and that's why I brought up pride, right? I feel like that's something that a lot of people struggle with and don't even realize, right? And it's the thing where I always say to people that honor, don't ever leave somewhere like in a bad way. Does that make sense? Don't ever leave somewhere because there's a conflict, right? Unless they personally asked you to leave, or God has specifically asked you to leave. But don't leave because of a conflict. Don't leave because of something that has happened. Because a lot of times it's all part of the process. We spoke about growing in moving from a place of perseverance to patience, and then to experience. All these things God is using to build you up for your next level. So if you run away every time from your next level, or from that experience and that building up, what happens is that you don't have enough experience to be able to do what God has called you to do. Do you get? Because God is more concerned about building you up than he is about even the vision that he has given you. In fact, I think it was Sarah Jakes that called it that the bait, that the vision or the assignment is like the bait, but what God is really after is your heart. So I think it starts with your heart. How are you feeling in your heart? Like if you're feeling like, oh, these people, they messed up. I remember when I was leaving my job, this was 5 years ago. It was the most amazing job. Everything was perfect. I had no business leaving it except that God had told me to. And I find that when I wanted to leave because of all the things that were happening there, I never got the release to. And I remember then even my husband didn't allow me, like he just, because I was constantly complaining, this person did this person said that, this person. But when it came from a place of peace, and it was a decision that I had made, like really considering and working with God in that, then it was different. So I'll say, what is the posture of your heart? Like, are you upset with these people? Are you frustrated? Are you then that's a flesh response as opposed to a spiritual response. Thank you, everyone. God bless you. Join the WhatsApp group. I'll be sharing more on there as well going forward. So if you know anyone that would benefit as well, send them on there. God bless you. Have an amazing week, new week, and see you soon. Bye.